Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. This is the English translation of the Majlis of Hazrat Maulana Qamar Uzzaman Saheb Damat Barakatuhum, which took place on Friday morning at the residence of Hazrat Wala in Alahbadi. Friday, the 26th of Shawwal 1446, 25th of April 2025. Our Hazrat Wala is speaking about this tadbir, that we put this together, that together, we try and work out this and calculate this, doing all of that. I mean, Allah's command is something else. What is bound to happen is going to happen, but we start planning and doing this and doing that. So this actually comes from the side of the nafs. And the reason for this year is that there is a veil there. There is a veil and there is a barrier there. That's the reason that this actually comes into existence. Now, when the heart becomes completely and totally sound, and it comes out of this fight, where it starts accepting that it is from the side of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it hands itself over to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then, this type of tadbir, etc., stands no chance in the sight and in the path and in the way of this certain person. Now we continue. Sheikh Ibn Ata Iskandari is saying that I heard my Sheikh Abul Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala an saying, Inna Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lamma khalaqal arda ala al-ma id tarabat. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the earth upon water, then it started shaking violently. فَأَرْسَاهَا بِالْجِبَالِ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala pegged it down by means of the huge mountains. So Allah ta'ala says, وَالْجِبَالَ أَرْسَاهَا. In a similar manner and fashion, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the nafs, this nafs also started behaving violently, and Allah Ta'ala then pegged it down with the mountains of aqal. Now, intaha kalamu Shaykh rahimahullah, Shaykh Abul Abbas, his article and wordings there then come to an end. Now we continue. Shaykh Ibn Ata Iskandari is saying, فَأَيُّ عَبْدٍ تَوَفَّرَ عَقْلُهُ وَاتَّسَعَ نُورُهُ. That servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala whose aqal, his mind and intelligence becomes complete, and his nur becomes vast, and the list goes on, then what are the rewards and the benefits there? تَنَزَّلَتْ عَلَيْهِ السَّكِينَةِ. That peace descends upon him from the side of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and his nafs becomes complete at peace, and it is not jumping around and shaking violently here, this way, that way, and the other. Allah ta'ala becomes sufficient then for this person, and he becomes completely contented. This nafs then becomes subdued, rather it bows down in front of the ahkam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It becomes firmly established when the qada and the taqdeer of Allah comes in front of it. This nafs continues with the help and the nur of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it comes out of all types of arguments, quarrels and fights with taqdeer and tadbir. He stops fighting, he bows down in front of the predestination and taqdeer from the side of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He hands himself over to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because this nafs now understands well, أَوَلَمْ يَكْفِ بِرَبِّكَ. Is this not sufficient for you that Allah ta'ala is watching you? أَنَّهُ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ شَهِيدٌ. Allah is witnessing everything. It continues in this manner, continues to progress. Here we mentioned something. We mentioned about this nafs and the ittirab and the troubles and the jumping of this nafs. So here our Hazrat Wala is speaking about some person who came to Hazrat Maulana Shah Wasiullah Sahab. Hazrat Maulana Shah Wasiullah Sahab praised him, this, that or the other. Now, such a type of thing came upon him that he started saying that I have conquered, I have reached, I have achieved. Nevertheless, Hazrat Maulana Shah Wasiullah Sahab was very, very grieved and disturbed about this. But after that, we don't even know what happened to this person, where he went, what he done. Did he pass away? Nobody knows. Another incident in Tanabawan, that some person came and he was completely out of control. His halat was terrible. He was running this way and that way. We're speaking about the istirab and the violentness of this nafs. How Allah pegged the earth down by means of mountains. Allah pegged the nafs down by means of the aql. When this aql becomes complete and the nur becomes vast, then all doors open. So when all of this started happening, everybody was shocked. Nobody could do anything, but the spiritual master was there. Hazrat Tanvi was there, and then he read on water and gave this person to drink. He drank one sip and everything was settled. He became right. Now in this path, looking at this incident, our Hazrat Wala is saying many a times, a person goes into such type of extremes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from getting caught like this year in such type of extremes. Now Hazrat Maulana Shah Wasiullah Sahab, he remarked on that day. Now you tell me and show to me that how, look at the capacity of Hazrat Maulana Shah Wasiullah Sahab, that this person was completely, वो बेखुद हो गया, it was completely out of control. Now you people create such a thing within yourselves, then we can talk. Meaning, look at the capacity of Hazrat Tanvi. Now you people also shake up and do something, create something within yourselves, that he gave him one sip of water and everything was straight. You know the kitab I'm reading from, our Hazrat Wala is saying that Hazrat Haji Imdadullah approached Hazrat Tanvi and said to him, Ashraf Ali, translate this kitab. It will be of great benefit to the people. Hazrat Maulana Shah Wasiullah Sahab there in the Khanka in Tanabawan, after the Asr Salat, he would go into the jungles in Muraqaba, in Dhikr, etc. You know, Maulana Mohammad gave me this kitab. I benefited from it tremendously. You know, another incident our Hazrat Wala is talking about is that a person came and he was in such a type of anxiety, completely stressed out and worried that if this happens, then what are we going to do? Hazrat Tanvi said one word to him, one sentence to him, and that was enough. He said, why mutu qabla an tamutu? Why are you dying before you actually died? Why are you taking all of that on your head before it has actually occurred and even happened? But that was enough for him. So create this type of aql and fahm, and then sukoon and peace will come. On one occasion, you know, I used to enter, our Hazrat Wala is saying, into the private chamber of Hazrat Maulana Shah Wasiullah Sahab. One day, I just entered like that, and I see Hazrat Maulana Shah Wasiullah Sahab pacing up and down. I don't think anybody even heard this share from Hazrat Maulana Shah Wasiullah Sahab. He's pacing up and down. He's not even conscious that I'm there in that chamber. I walk in and he's addressing himself and saying, Tu Pir Shudi Hafiz, Az Mehkada Bayrun Shod. That you have become old now, Hafiz. You have become old now, Wasiullah. Come out from this type of place that you are in. Rindi wahawasnaki, this type of behavior, this type of following base desires, etc. Okay, understood. If a person is young, he's doing this here, he's nadan, but you have reached old age. How is it then? Another incident of Hazrat Wala is speaking. We're speaking about this nafs, and a person istirab of this nafs. A person came and he was crying, and in some amazing type of hal overwhelmed him of the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hazrat Tanvi then addressed him and says, what's all this about? He says, I'm fearing terribly of that of Jahannam. Hazrat Tanvi just said one word to him, one sentence to him, that tell me, was Jahannam and fire hell only created for you? Bas, just that. Dozakh sirf tumhare liye paida kiya gaya. That this fire hell and Jahannam, was it only created for you? Hazrat Tanvi just had to say that, and that hal that had overcome him was done and it was over. So all this type of istirab, type of confusion, restlessness, jumping of the nafs, restlessness of the nafs, confusion this way and that way, it's not firm, it's not calm. All of this here is because the person's aql, his mind, his fahm, his understanding is incomplete. Such ajib type of hal also came over Hazrat Tanvi. Let me tell you something else. बाग में लगता नहीं, सहरा से घबराता है जी, अब कहाँ ले जाके बैठे ऐसे दीवाने को. You know, when I go and sit in the gardens, my heart doesn't feel happy. I'm restless. And then when I go out into the open, into the fields, and then I become even more anxious. Now what to do with such a person? Where do you take a person who's so madly in love with Allah? Where do you take him and seat him? Nevertheless, when a person continues like that, he continues, and what happens? His aql becomes complete, his nur becomes vast, the sakina comes upon him, and he goes from the different stages. From lawama, he goes to mutma'inna. Then he actually deserves to be addressed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ya ayyatuha nafsul mutma'inna, irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyya, fadkhuli fi ibadi, wadkhuli jannati. Now let us make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, Mauli Sher Mohammad sent this kitab. This is Meri Zindagi ki Tohfa. This is a great gift that came to me in my life. Allah Ta'ala give him jazai khair. Let us make dua. Allahumma inna nas'aluka nafsan bika mutma'inna tu'minu biliqa'ik wa tarda biqada'ik wa taqna'u bi'ata'ik. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam himself made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for nafsan mutma'inna. Allahumma inna nas'aluka nafsan bika mutma'inna tu'minu biliqa'ik wa tarda biqada'ik wa taqna'u bi'ata'ik. Rabbana taqabbal minna innaka antas samiul alim wa tub alayna innaka antat tawwabur rahim. Bi hurmati sayyidin nabiyyil kareem sallallahu alayhi wasallam.